Welcome to the Biz and Tech Podcast. My name is Blake Dowling. I'm the CEO of Aegis Business Technologies in Tallahassee, Florida. And today we have Josh McLawhorn, president of Level Up Digital Media, on the show. It is 2023, and for the past several years, if you happen to be involved in a pandemic, you probably watched lots of documentaries, lots of movies, and that is our theme for today, as Josh is a filmmaker, among many other things. We're going to talk about your entire career and your most recent project very shortly. But first, I want to share my favorite documentary story, as I had written a FloridaPolitics.com column on the island of Bimini and some development work that had gone on there that had disrupted the ecosystem. So it's out. I talked to some people in Texas and England about it. It was getting some traction around the nation and the world. And the phone rings one night, and it's 512 area code. I pick up the phone. Hello, Blake. It's Bradley Beasley. And I said, hello, Bradley. What can I do for you? And he says, I'm a filmmaker in Austin. I Google him, and he produced Fearless Freaks, which we're all a big fan of. That is the story of the Flaming Lips, rock royalty. Anywho, long story short, Bradley said, let's get down to Bimini. Let's make a movie about the island, and I want you in it. We did that. It was a blast. It was sponsored by Costa. All expenses paid. What an island. What a story. Bradley Beasley, what a legend. And with that, let's segue into our discussion today on filmmaking. Welcome to the show, sir.
Blake, thanks for having me. Many times behind the camera, first time in front of it on the show, and proud to be here. Thank you.
I know it's a bit of a mind warp, as reminds me of when I was on the show as a guest with Jay Revel.
That's right. I remember that.
Yeah, you got to keep it light, got to keep it mixed up, and here we go.
We swapped chairs. I remember you were on the guest side, and Jay was on the host side.
Absolutely, man. So we've worked together a long time. I had the privilege of seeing Unfiltered, the Truth About Oysters recently. Congratulations on the early success of the project.
Thank you.
Let's just dive right into that before we talk about your career. When did the journey of Unfiltered start? How did it get started? And what led us to where we are today, coming off the premiere at the Sarasota Film Festival after the private viewing here in Tallahassee? Tell us the story, man.
So a lot of people who live in this area know that the Apalachicola Bay is a famous place for oysters. Personally, growing up in Tallahassee, my family would go over to St. George Island and Apalachicola. From the time that I was so small, I had to be carried around, by my mom. And, after the BP oil spill, there was a lot of concern that the oil first and then the dispersants were going to get into the bay. And the oyster population had been going down and down and down. And FSU got this $8 million grant from Triumph to study the bay. And so the producer of the film, Chucha Barber, contacted me and said, hey, this is a big deal. Do you want to do a film about oysters? And for those of you who know Chucha, she is just, a ball of energy and hard to say no to, very hard to say no to. And in addition to that, I was interested in it. So I agreed, and we started essentially planning a documentary about oysters.
And what year was that?
That was in December of 2018.
Okay.
And then in 2019, we started, doing all sorts of interviews with different experts, sort of just in an exploratory way. A lot of times with documentary, the story you want to tell. You sort of write narration, you write a plan for it, and then you go out and you gather those pieces and you assemble it, and you're kind of off to the races. But in this case, we were trying to figure the story out because I don't think it had been concisely told in any way before. And then right in the middle of production, the state of Florida closed Apalachicola Bay to wild harvest.
Wow.
Completely closed it. And so we knew we were really onto something. And 4 years later, the film is finally done. It premiered 2 weeks ago at the Sarasota Film Festival for their 25th anniversary. And we packed the house in their biggest venue, and there were so many people who didn't get to see it, who were requesting a chance to see it. They gave us the one of the 2 encore slots at the festival, which was huge considering there were other films with huge names. I think Dennis Quaid was in one of the films. There was a National Geographic film that was executive produced by Leonardo DiCaprio, and they were gracious enough to give us one of the 2 encore slots. So we're very thankful to them, and had a great showing.
Congratulations. That's awesome. So when did you know I want to create digitally with video podcasts? I mean, I assume your favorite podcast is the Biz and Tech podcast. We don't even need to ask that question, but was it a childhood dream? Was it I took a class in college? Was it a mentor? How'd you get started down this path?
Wow, that's a question that I have to kind of like think back on, because I think my first ever camera that I had, other than like a disposable camera at camp or something like that, was I had a Game Boy camera. Like it like plugged into the Game Boy like a cartridge, but it was a camera. And I had a lot of fun with that thing, but I never considered working with cameras as a career. I was very driven as a science and math student. Went to UF. That's something we share in common.
What a wonderful university.
What a wonderful, wonderful university and town. Gainesville is great.
Headed there on Thursday for the spring game. Go Gators.
All right, go Gators.
Absolutely.
So I graduated from there with a biochemistry degree. I was very focused on going to medical school. And then kind of towards the end of college, I was doing some shadowing and internships, and I realized, I don't really like the day-to-day of a doctor. Or the night-to-night, or the,
On call is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I was kind of, I was exhausted, frankly, from the academic environment of basically a pre-med student, and I was looking at 4 years of medical school after, an intense application process, and then finding a residency somewhere, relocating most likely, all to get a job that I wasn't too thrilled about getting. So I joked that I had a quarter-life crisis, and
that's nice. I like
yeah. And after graduating UF, I went to I spent the summer doing a nonprofit called Bike and Build, where with a group of other people, in their early 20s, we biked across the continental United States and did affordable housing projects along the way. I spent every last dollar that I had, down to zero. And then I finished that, and I realized, I need to kind of figure out what I'm doing next. So moved back to Gainesville, took back my college job at a pet food and supply store, and kind of just did that for, 6 months or so, before I got a call about a gentleman in Tallahassee who was hiring at a video production company. And I did a lot of freelance still photography in college, no video at all, but I had a pretty extensive photography portfolio. I wound up getting hired at that company based off of my photography portfolio, and worked there for 4 years until the partners of the company kind of decided to go their separate ways. And I had a good relationship with both of them, and I didn't want to, pick. So I started freelancing, and that has become Level Up Digital Media, where we are today.
That's an awesome story. And you have coined a new term for the English language, the quarter life crisis. And I think everyone has one. Thinking about documentary films, I was sitting at Smith's Old Bar in Atlanta one evening, and a guy walks in with a video camera, and he just captures everyone's attention, not just with the camera, but his personality. And he says, I'm on this journey to film life and real life and have an experience. And so I got to know this guy, and he had his quarter life crisis and decided he would drive around the country following the dead, which used to be a thing. I don't know if you can follow John Mayer around and consider that following the dead, but whatever. We're not here to judge. Nouveau Riche Dead fans.
Call the police on you.
Exactly. But he put this film together called The Journey. And it was his trip around the nation, interviewing interesting people, former president Jerry Garcia, a UPS executive, Henry Winkler. Fascinating story. And while we were not included in the film, sadly, from our night of revelry at Smith's Old Bar, it was a really neat behind-the-scenes peek at the documentary film process. And if I didn't say it earlier, kudos to you again for your film, and not just the successes, but the power of the film. I think a good documentary puts you in the boat, if you will, and your story really puts you in that boat around Apalachicola Bay and other places around the nation, just really feeling the 1960s and the 70s and present day and the angst and the passion and the success, everything associated with it. I loved it. It was really, really, really fun to be there. And thank you for inviting Jeannie and I to the private viewing. It was lovely.
Our pleasure. I think earlier when I was kind of running through the production of the film, I didn't really even mention what it's about. It's called Unfiltered: The Truth About Oysters, and it's about the collapse of Apalachicola Bay, but not just that. I mean, that's sort of the ground zero of the story, because Apalachicola Bay used to produce up to 15% of the United States oyster supply. But what's happening in Apalachicola Bay is happening in oyster-producing bays all around the world, not just in the U.S., but in South Africa and in Canada and Australia and Europe. I mean, there are a lot of pressures as a result of, coastline being developed. The rivers that flow into the oceans, we're drawing more water out of those. There's septic tanks right next to the water leaching,
Right.
sewage, into the water. There are a lot of different pressures on oysters. And so the film explores, why are the reefs collapsing and what can be done to bring them back. And there are a lot of really interesting things being done to bring them back. I mean, even right here in Tallahassee, there are all sorts of, because oyster reef restoration is this new thing, there's not like a playbook yet. And so there are all these people trying all these different things. It's kind of like one of our interviews said, it's like the Wild West of restoration right now. People are trying all sorts of things to see what works. And so we profile those things in the film. We talk about what happened in New York City. I mean, when New York City was discovered, not New York City was discovered, but what is now, Manhattan, the Isle of, Manhattan.
Right.
There are these letters from Dutch settlers writing back to their home country saying, there are oysters here as big as a dinner plate, and things like that. And now, of course, you wouldn't want to eat any seafood out of the, New York Harbor, or East
Right.
River. But they are growing a lot of oysters there to try to replenish the bay, because oysters filter huge quantities of water. And so, you put them out there and they have this cleaning effect on the water. So the film talks about all of that and sort of points toward the sort of solutions that we kind of have to adopt if we want to keep eating oysters, which I certainly do.
Absolutely. And living in Florida is a blessing. And when we went through the pandemic, I don't think I left the state for a while, 18 months, who knows how long it was. But having Apalachicola and St. Teresa and Carabel and Panama City and Destin and the whole 30A stretch, as crowded as it is, and not to mention Gainesville, of course, and Jacksonville. Jack's Beach is a blast. I mean, the natural beauty that we have in the state, you don't have to leave Florida. People come here to vacation, that 1 week a year for a reason, and we get to live it 24/7. And people don't really put the fact together that aren't from around here. The Tallahassee is so close to the coast. You want to have dinner at Angelo's, boom, you're there and back in your bed by 10. So awesome. Great story. And, oysters. I remember sitting in Charleston one night. I think we were at High Cotton having dinner, and they're like, tonight, the special are Apalachicola oysters for $48. And I'm like, well, we could give them much cheaper back home. That's a hard pass. We'll have the calamari. All right, couple questions on movies, because you got to answer this question if you're a filmmaker. What is your favorite movie? And to not pinhole it, we're going to do a 3-part question. Ladies and gentlemen, favorite sci-fi movie, favorite comedy, and favorite documentary. Go.
Wow. Okay. Let's start with favorite comedy, because I think I've got an answer for that one already. I love The Big Lebowski. I mean, I have seen that movie so many times.
The dude abides.
The dude abides. It's just an awesome movie. The characters, the casting, I mean, the writing. Everyone knows that scene with John Turturro in the purple jumpsuit.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the Spanish version of Hotel California playing, and, just what an introduction to that character.
And people don't always notice those subtle things. I remember watching a Wes Anderson movie, Life Aquatic, And I'm like, all
Another
these
great.
songs sound so familiar. And it's all of David Bowie's music
Yep.
in Spanish.
In Portuguese, actually.
Portuguese!
Yes.
Wow, you were paying attention.
And the guy who's playing them in the movie is the actual artist. They took the guy who actually performed him and cast him in the movie as a shipmate.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I didn't notice that until at least the third watch. I love what Wes does behind the camera. But what a great film. We could talk about that for 2 hours. So, but back to your answer.
Yes.
So sci-fi is next.
Okay, sci-fi is next.
You can't say Blade Runner.
Yeah, I'll there's so many because I mentioned, I'm a biochemistry major and I still love all the science related to it. And honestly, in our video production business, we try to do as much science and tech work as we can.
Mm-hmm.
So I really have a lot that I like, but if I'm on the spot and answering that question, I'm probably gonna have to go with maybe like Alien or Aliens or Predator.
Which one was the first Alien? Is that Alien?
Alien is the first one, and I actually think I like Aliens
So
better.
just adding the S made it part two? That's
Yeah,
the
they might as
sequel?
well have called it Alien 2. Yeah, the first one, they're different. The first one she's isolated, with
Right.
the alien. It's more of like a psychological thing. The second one, you sort of know what you're getting into, and there's more like action, I guess. The second one is like the game over, man, game over.
Right.
Where that
Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton, yeah. But and then also Predator has so many great like Arnold Schwarzenegger lines from back in the day,
Right.
And honestly, like Jesse
That's
Ventura.
the original I'll Be Back, isn't it?
Well, no,
That's Terminator.
No, but it's like when they
Back to the chopper.
they break, yeah, they break into this like I don't know, like I can't even remember the plot exactly, but he like at one point he like throws a knife and it like impales this guy against the wall, and he's like, stick around, And then
Best impression of the day award goes to you. Well done.
oh yeah. So yeah, I'd have to go with one of those. I mean, the whole. In fact, I'll switch it and I'll say Predator is the answer, because they're these commandos. These are supposed to be these elite special forces guys or whatever, and then the whole movie, this alien that's on Earth, I guess, presumably to like hunt humans,
Right.
is like taking them out one by one, and then at the end, Arnold gets the best of it. But
I think there's a new one coming out. That franchise might have lost me at some point. I'm surprised
it was
you
probably
didn't-
on 3 or maybe 2, because at first they were in the jungle and it was this whole environment, and then eventually it's like they went into the city and it was just a totally different kind of a thing.
Now, as a filmmaker, I thought you might go artsy on me and name like an early sci-fi masterpiece, or
The
Blob, or like
Fly.
The Fly, or then like in the Black Hole in the 70s. That was fascinating.
And a local one, Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Nice.
They filmed that at Wakulla Springs.
Not that I'm dismissing your Predator answer. It's your question. And the final question, favorite documentary.
Oof, that one's really tough. I mean, in the spirit of this podcast, I'm going to go with The Fearless Freaks. I watched that in high school. I think it came out in like 2005, and I watched it like maybe my junior or senior year, and I already loved The Flaming Lips, and then just seeing that documentary, I was like blown away. There's this one scene where I mean, they talk about like in the film, he talks about Steven's addiction and things like that. But there's this one scene where he's playing, I think, a mandolin with his like brothers and his father, and it's just this beautiful little family moment. And you can tell where all the musical talent came from, because the family got together and played music.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I learned so much about the band, and it's cool to watch those behind the scenes documentaries, because you can learn so much about your favorite bands. Or you can learn a lot about bands that don't even exist, like in This Is Spinal Tap.
Absolutely. Working with Bradley Beasley on location in Bimini was one of the highlights of my career for sure, because you see a documentary, you have a different perspective, obviously, but as a fan, as a viewer, you see it, you like it, you don't like it, you move on. But when you're immersed in it, and he's got the camera in your face and he's like, I can't hear you, man. Like, say it like you mean it, like, well, I'm sitting at a bar in Bimini eating conch salad. I mean it. And he's like, and then like, okay, all right, let's work together. Just be authentic, and the coaching process, the authentic process, the shot, like, let's get that behind you. And seeing this massive Hilton hotel while also cruising through the mangroves and the weird ecosystem that does exist on Bimini now. But man, Beasley's catalog is fascinating. Hill Stomp Holler, a trip around the Mississippi Delta, and all the bluesmen that used to play and were prevalent are coming back thanks to people like Possum Records and Bradley Beasley making that known. But Fearless Freaks, Christmas on Mars, the Prison Rodeo. He did a football film. He doesn't appear to like the University of Florida. I think he's a Nebraska fan, but we'll forgive him as long as he's passionate about football. Good stuff. All right, so favorite sports moment. Let's pivot away from the film world.
Okay.
You don't have to have been there. You can be sitting on your couch enjoying a moment. But from day one to 2023, what was that iconic sports moment that you said, oh my God, I'll never forget this as long as I live?
Well, I have one that is seared into my memory in a good way. And I wasn't in the stadium, but I was very close. The 2008 Florida Gators football national championship.
Nice.
The game against Oklahoma, the jump pass. I mean, that game was just incredible. I was my friend lived right off University Avenue, and we were all packed into this tiny little house, like the somewhat rotten floor of this sketchy Gainesville student house was just like bent down, with all the people, and everyone's of course jumping up and down. You can feel the whole house flexing and stuff. And when the game was over and it was clear that the Gators had won the national championship, we just poured out of those houses in those neighborhoods, and everyone was just totally clogging University Avenue, and it was just a wild time. So that game, that whole season, honestly, I was here in Tallahassee for the FSU game that year, and that's the one where Tebow has got the garnet paint all over him because it was really rainy that day.
Yeah, Darnell Dockett tried to tackle him, and he stiff arms him.
Yep,
that was a beautiful.
He looked
moment.
Like he was covered in blood, and there's that picture where he's just
that was quite a moment to be alive.
Yep.
I was at the 2008 national championship, and
you were at the game.
Yeah, we were in Miami, and we had coordinated some tickets through a broker, which fell apart at the last minute. And so we're walking around with a bunch of cash trying to find tickets for 10 people, and we found them, and they were literally nosebleed Oklahoma seats in the last row, the last row. But it didn't really matter. That game was epic, and. So you were in school in 08?
I was, yep. Yeah.
See, I had the experience with the 1996 national championship. That was my senior year.
That was the first one, right?
Yeah, that was it. Spurrier in New Orleans.
Yep.
Unbelievable. Well, good. We have some commonality with our favorite sports moments. So Sarasota Film Fest. What was that experience like? What was, you mentioned the encore slot. How many people attended? How many films? Tell us a little bit about the experience.
So I don't know how many films were in the festival all in all. I know there were a lot of short films, and there were quite a few features as well. It was the 25th anniversary of the Sarasota Film Festival, so they've been around a long time. And it was my first ever film festival experience. I was going to go to South by Southwest in 2020 with some friends, not to bring Unfiltered there because I wasn't done with it at the time. But really just to kind of attend the festival and watch films and hang out and, listen to the music and just go to South by Southwest.
Right.
But then, of course, the pandemic happened and it got canceled and all that. So this Sarasota Film Festival experience was my first ever film festival experience. And I have to say, it was just awesome. I mean, the people there were very passionate about films in general. There was a group of filmmakers that, found out that it was our world premiere and it was also their world premiere, and they reached out to us and invited us to come to their film, which was a very different film. They described it as a psychosexual thriller. Yeah,
good description.
I didn't get a chance to see it because it didn't air while I was there, but I've exchanged information with them, and we're gonna share screener links with each other and everything, but. We were able to go to their after party and hang out with them, and it was cool being able to meet people who were, in the space, and to be able to just, swap ideas and experiences. And, everyone's different. Like one of the things that I really like about this industry is like, there's all these different talents that come into play,
Right.
Like I play piano, but from sheet music. I'm not one to like sit down and like jam with somebody. Like if I, sat down at a keyboard and someone was like, playing some jazz or whatever, I wouldn't be able to just like sit down and like contribute to it. But there are people there who like score films who it's like a language to them.
Right.
They hear it and they instantly just like their brain picks up on like, okay, yeah, this is the key. This is the, the time signature. They're doing this with the melody, this is the chord progression, and they kind of just like go right in, To me, that's magic, people who can do that. So, and then actors too, I'm not one to, be in front of the camera, it's like, whoa. But there are some people who they get in front of a camera and they just sort of turn on and they can like be this character. And so,
musicians are like that. Jeez.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was a great experience. If I could do it over again, I would go back and stay for the entire week, and just go to as many films as I could. We were trying to make sure that our film went as well as possible, and so we were all a little bit on edge. And it's like, do you guys have everything you need? Did you test it? Like that kind of thing. But the Sarasota Film Festival team was just such pros, and the film looked and sounded great. We had, in retrospect, we had nothing to worry about, and we would gladly go back. I had a blast. And I look forward to future film festivals. I mean, this was our first one. We've applied to some others, and at this moment, I can't say what they are because we haven't been officially accepted. But there are quite a few film festivals. One of them that we've had some interest from is actually in Norway, so we might be going to Norway.
Excellent.
Apparently, they're having some oyster issues too,
Huh.
or shellfish issues.
Yeah, it's funny when you write about the environment, when you make a film about the environment. It's a global cause that people just rally. When Beasley called me about Bimini, he surprisingly he said, "Your article on Bimini was the only one I could find on the internet."
What?
Yeah, like current. And this was in 18. And, your film festival story, as we close today, it reminds me of, sitting in my office in 2001 and VH1 called. I was working in the entertainment business, and they're like, "Hey, your band, Dexter Freebish, we've added the video Leaving Town. It's in rotation. Why don't you guys come out to Sundance with us? We're having a little party." And I'm like,
whoa.
I'm picturing a show. You go to the show. We played at the White House with another band. Excuse me, not the White House, the Vice President's house. You go, you play a show, you move on. Sundance, not so much. You go, like you're saying, wish you'd stayed a week. We did. We stayed as guests of VH1 for a week in Park City as part of the Sundance Film Festival. We had one show to open for Everclear at a private party for VH1 and Capitol Records. And the rest of the time, we were on the slopes. We were in the restaurants. The first night we went out for happy hour. Tom Hanks' wife sat down with us and we did tequila shots. And she is the coolest. And our entourage, we were on a bus. There was like 4 buses. Picture like old people on a tour sightseeing thing, except it was Carmen Electra, Scott Ian from Anthrax, who's married to Meatloaf's daughter, David Allen Greer, Dexter Freebish, me, and we're all hanging out for 4 days on and off the bus, going to these things, and no egos, except for Carmen Electra. She was kind of psychotic. But everybody else was super cool, and I will never forget it. In the films, there was one about Kurt and Courtney that it was dropping at that time, and everybody just wants to talk about art and film and hang out and stay out late, and it was such an experience. And if I could talk about a redo, I didn't have a film in it, but if I could redo Sundance, wow, that would be fun. Awesome.
Sundance would be awesome to go to. We've thought at first, we would go to some of these big film festivals,
right,
before we realized that they get like 10,000 entries and they've got like 40 slots.
Oh yeah, and they can barely. It's kind of like you were talking about Austin and South by, where you have, I went to the music portion of South by, and, you literally have bands playing in hotel lobbies because every music venue is booked.
Right.
It's like that, where can we show film? Let's show it in the cafeteria. They use every space possible for films and or shows. Well, awesome. All right, well, let's have a takeaway. How can people learn more about your film, Oysters? Excuse me. How can people learn more about your film? Tell us where they can see it.
So our website is really simple. It's oyster.film. We'll bring it up on screen here. And that is a good way to communicate with us. We have a contact form if you are interested in being involved with the film, because we are very much fundraising in order to take the film far and wide. We produced it on a very modest budget, and there were a whole lot of just, I don't want to call them unpaid hours because it's not like it's for a client or anything, but there was a whole lot of labor of love that went into the production of the film. So go to oyster.film to learn more and to track film festival progress. You can also follow us on Instagram. I think it's at Unfiltered Oyster Film, and we will be posting updates to there. Right now, we're hoping to go to other film festivals within Florida, and this fall we're hoping to actually be in the Tallahassee Film Festival. So everyone in the area who wants to see it will be able to see it this fall, assuming we get into the Tallahassee Film Festival. After that, the goal is to get it on like Netflix or Amazon or one of the big streaming services so that anybody can stream it.
Awesome. That's a wrap for today. Go check out Unfiltered. Thank you, Josh. We will see you next time on the Biz and Tech Podcast. My name is Blake Dowling, documentary addict, CEO of a tech company, and writer for FloridaPolitics.com, as well as the Tallahassee Democrat. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.